Howdy, friends. I have another wonderful literary agent on the podcast with me today. Jessica Mileo with Inkwell Management is going to share her philosophy as a literary agent or a book midwife, which is my favorite thing ever, and share some really cool query information and knowledge with us. So let's get to know Jessica. Jessica, let's begin by having you tell me what drew you to publishing and becoming a literary agent.
So besides the common answer of, I loved reading
Right.
when I was growing up, when I graduated with my useless English creative writing degree and was coming to terms with the fact that I could never see myself writing a book, I knew I loved books. I kind of panicked hard. Like, what am I supposed to do with an English degree a few years after, 2008 recession? So I did what any other panicked recent grad did, and I went to graduate school. I finally put two and two together that publishing was the thing also. I was a little slow on the uptake in the beginning. And I wound up getting my master's at publishing at Pace University, where I got a really broad view of what the industry looks like and just dipping my toes in it. So I saw what all the roles were, and I fell in love with the idea of being an agent. As much as I didn't want to write a book, I wanted to be as close to the process as possible, and I was like, this is the way I could be. I like to call it a book midwife, essentially.
Yeah.
I'm here to coach you, to help you birth this beautiful baby, and get this book out into the world, and then work on the next one.
That is the best way to put it, a book midwife.
Yeah.
I love it.
That I tell all new clients, I'm like, I don't want to write a book, but I want to be there. I want to be your doula. I want to be right there with you.
I love it. Well, I'm glad that, your journey took you to where you are now so that you get to be that, helpful person in an author's life.
Yeah.
So you alluded to the fact that, of course, you've, always loved books, and that's kind of what's spurred you into studying creative writing. But do you remember when your love of books began?
I have a very early, not my memory. My mother would tell me how she would love to read to me. My family's not big readers. My mom is the only one that really reads. But she said that I memorized, when I was 2, I memorized, a Dr. Seuss book.
Oh.
And I would just know exactly which page each sentence was on. So I tricked all of my aunts and uncles and everyone into thinking that I could read very, very early. So I feel like that just set me up for success.
Yes.
I was like, is this my motto for life? I'm just going to fake it till I make it. But really, I was just, since I could read, I was just never without a stack of books. I think my mom really instilled this love because she loved to take me to the library. And she would just let me check out whole stacks of books to read over the course of the week. And then we'd go back and do it all over again. I would sit on my end of the couch, she would sit on her end, and we'd just have quiet time together.
I love it.
Yeah, so it really started there. I love a public library.
Oh, the public library is the best. I loved taking my kids there during the summer. It was something they actually got really excited to go and do and look at all the books, which made me so happy. Mm-hmm. But I love just walking around and, looking at all the different books.
And it's all, it's not even all just front list, too. It's not the latest ones. You're going to get a slew of books that haven't been published, or published 5 years ago. So there's just so much joy to be found in, those stacks.
There is. And that's one of my favorite things to do in, a big bookstore like Powell's that we have here in Portland, or a library, is to not go in looking for a book, but really just to walk the shelves and, pick books up and mm-hmm. see what I find. Because I've found some of my favorite books that way.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. So, Jessica, we're going to get to some query questions because everybody who listens to these interviews with literary agents loves to get some query questions answered.
Of course.
But my first one is, do you think queries need to stick to the specified formula? Now, this isn't your agency's submission guidelines, because of course people should be following those, right? But mm-hmm. This is the pretty standard query formula that most people think you should have. Just the who, why, what, the stakes, and trying not to do it in a gimmicky kind of way.
Yeah, I think just because us agents are looking at such a large amount of queries at a time, Um, as much as like when you do it slightly different, it's going to stick out. For the most part, it doesn't necessarily stick out in the best way. You're like, oh, this is not giving me, like, yes, it's a different way to send a query, but it's not giving me the information I actually need.
Right.
Like, what I need from the formula queries is that I want to know right away, like, why do you think it's for me? What is the story about and who you are? Like, having that basic formula is so helpful, because then I can get straight to the heart of the story, and I can know right away, just in your query letter, if it actually is for me, if I'm going to be a good fit for that author. Because the worst thing is to work with an agent that actually isn't the right fit for you.
Right, and I would imagine you see so many queries too that just kind of knowing what to expect as you read through them is really helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. So my next one is, what would your number one query no-no be?
So formula-wise, like if we're talking about just the way the query looks without the content, crazy font or font sizes are just so hard on my eyes, and I never want to see a papyrus font or Comic Sans. Like, if it gives me a headache to read, it's not gonna, make me want to read the rest of the submission. It's just, it's don't need to show your flair, with the font.
Right.
Show your flair with the words, Content-wise, for me, I'm definitely, anytime that it comes to, like, if there's incest or like trauma or abuse or drug use or anything like that kind of, I'm not the person for that. That's definitely tends to be an automatic no for me.
That's always good to just be clear about that, though, so that people just cross you off their list if it has those sorts of things in there.
Please.
Well, I definitely think the font one is interesting, and again, it's probably somebody trying to maybe stand out a little bit. Like, oh, maybe if I do a cool font, then they'll be taken aback.
I'll still take a look. I'm still gonna read it because sometimes very good authors like pirates. I mean, I can't fault them, but it always puts me a little on edge where I'm like, oh, this font is very difficult.
Yes, it can be hard on your eyes, especially when you stare at your computer all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Exactly.
So my next question is, what things in the first pages that you go through will make you stop reading immediately?
So I'm not a big fan of opening up with dialogue. And if I don't understand in those first pages, if I don't understand who the character is, if I don't know what their name is within the first page, or what their situation looks like at the beginning of the story, I usually find it that it's very hard for me to connect to them and want to figure out what's happening with their lives.
Right.
Without these key anchors, it's hard to connect emotionally, and that's what you want your readers to do right away. You want your readers to, the minute they read it, they download that first page, and they're like, okay, I understand a glimpse into this person's life, and I want to know more.
Yeah. You want them to be sucked in, not confused.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So on a more positive side, what's your favorite thing to see in a query? What's something that just gets you really excited?
I love it when authors are picking me for a reason, like when they notice that I work with a specific author, or they've looked at my manuscript wish list or my Twitter, or seen something that sees, that I'm hungry for whatever they're writing about, and think that I'd be a really good fit for them. I love seeing that. I love people who are like, oh, you want, something lighthearted and fun like Sophie Kinsella, I'm like, oh, yes, I definitely do. Like, if this is going to be in that vein, I'm going to pay even more attention to this query.
I love it. And I think that just goes to show, while querying on the author side is definitely not the funnest experience.
No, yeah.
It pays to do your research and to not just collect a bunch of emails and names and fire off, queries to a bunch of agents you know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, that's
that personal touch it just really goes above and beyond for me.
Good. That's a good thing to remember. I have a question about, self-published authors who've, previously self-published. Would you have any different tips for them as they approach querying? And this would, of course, be with, the hope and the expectation that they'd be querying you a new project, something that hasn't been published previously. But just any good tips for them?
I guess so for previously self-published authors, again, if your sales are not like sensational, it's going to be tough if you're trying to query and submit the book that you self-published, right? It might be tough for an editor at like a major trade publisher to make an offer, because in their eyes it's like, oh, it's already been in the market and
right.
we're seeing how it's performed, even though obviously the support that a self-published book is not going to be the same as what a traditionally published book gets. But if you're looking to make that jump from self-pub to traditional publishing, I do recommend working with a book that you haven't published yet. You know, if you get an agent, maybe you talk about a pen name or something like that, so that it just makes it feel fresh and makes your voice feeling fresh for the market, and it might make it easier to entice an editor at a major trade house to make an offer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you
great sales? I mean, that's great.
Do you recommend that they, even if, you know, like if they were querying a new project, do you recommend or, you know, care if they, you know, that they mention that they've previously self-published before? Like, is that something you would want to know beforehand, or something that doesn't really, you know, play into any decision making for you?
I'd always like to know. I definitely would just like to know, especially, you know, if we decide to work together, I always want to know my client's full publishing history, so I know what we can, you know, how we can strategize best. You know, if you have a self-published book and it did really, really well, like, we're gonna capitalize on that.
Yeah.
And if not, like, we understand, okay, let's try to figure out why that didn't work out, you know, or okay, this is a different direction we need to go in.
Okay.
So yeah, I always want to know. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to represent you if you're self-published, but it does mean we have to strategize differently than if it's just a unpublished author.
And in terms of just overall authors who are querying, so not any, you know, specifically previously self-published, but what would your tips or golden rules be for authors who are in the querying trenches right now?
It's not, so I don't really have a tip or golden rule, because there's so much advice and helpful and smart advice out there. But I just want every querying author and agented authors that are on subs to know that publishing is this perfect storm of art and business, and it's so subjective. Books that I would die for, you know, I have not been able to sell. So it's like, it's such a weird situation where it's not quantifiable if your book is going to sell or not, or if your book is going to get you an agent. And it's tough, because your art is so personal, but then at the same time you're trying to make a career out of it, or trying to get something published, so which feels more, you know, logical or financially like part of a business.
Yeah.
So to always just not take it to heart, as hard as that might be, you know, that you will find someone that connects with your book and your work intrinsically, whether it's an agent and an editor or a publishing house. I guess I do have one advice, and I'm sure countless other agents said this: don't sign with a publisher without getting an agent first. I promise that an agent will make their commission worthwhile to work with you, and will protect your intellectual property at the same time. You don't want to sign away like you do an indie publisher that read your manuscript and then they want your film rights or your life rights. I don't know. You never know. Always be very careful.
Definitely careful with signing contracts and rights away.
Exactly.
So you're at that point with an author where you've read the manuscript, you're super interested, you know, you love the book, and you're on the phone call with them. What else are you looking for in an author and, you know, that creative partner?
I'm definitely looking for someone who's just bursting with ideas and is always eager to try something new. I personally work across genres, so if I'm working with a YA author and they want to go into adult, I'm like, yes, let's do it. Let's figure out, you know, let's talk through ideas, let's brainstorm. I'm very much an agent that likes to be a partner to my clients, and I like to be as collaborative as they want me to be. I like to work with clients who are happy to work on, as happy, I put happy in quotations, to work on revisions and getting down, like, revisions are no fun, but like, they understand that anything I'm trying to get them to do is to make their work better. I'm not trying to tell you to revise just to watch you suffer.
Right.
And are just willing to get down to like the nitty gritty for edit. You know,
I think
someone
that's
like that.
yeah, very important, and can be just kind of like a mindset shift as authors who have spent all this solo time writing a story, and they go into that, you know, more business side of publishing, that, you know, things are going to change and you're going to have to make changes. That's a good you know, heads up for people to kind of transition as they go through this process.
Yeah, agents tend to, we're able to have a step back from your work, and we see what's going on in the market, and we can help you navigate so that you're not wasting your time on something that we're not sure is going to work out. Not that we're not going to tell you to do your passion, like write what you love, but we're also going to be like realistic about what's happening in the market and what's going to be worth your time.
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah.
Definitely. So I just have a couple questions left for you. I would love to know what's on your manuscript wish list right now. So for everybody listening who might have something that, you know, they could send you.
Yeah. So right now, just broadly, I'm very much in the mood for Latinx rep in middle grade and young adult and adult contemporary novels. I am half Cuban, so I'm always looking for that representation in books.
Nice.
I'm also really looking for adult women's fiction with happy endings. I love a happy ending.
Oh yeah.
That can deal with a variety of topics. I'm a foodie, so and if it's about food, all the better. And any of these books, or all of them, which would be great, can have queer rep. I would love to work with more queer books. I'm always looking for that.
Cool. Well, I hope people who are listening have some of that for you and can send it your way.
Yeah.
So, my last question, I've been told, is kind of a hard one, but I would love to know what your favorite book is right now. This isn't your favorite book ever, just something you read recently that you really enjoyed.
This is the hardest question.
I know.
But right now, I'm in love with the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. I believe Tor.com publishes it. Or it might be Tor proper, I'm not sure. But I just finished the first book, is All Systems Red, and I just finished it and then reread it, and then I bought the next four, and they're perfect little novellas, like 100-something pages.
Ooh.
And you just devour them. I'm like, it's about like a security bot that manages to hack its own system so that it can watch TV. And I'm just like, this is a perfect character.
I love it.
What more could you ask?
That's awesome. You're the second person who's said that as their favorite book in the recent history.
Highly
so
recommend.
That's a good one. Jessica, thank you so much for chatting with me and sharing some of your wonderful history and query knowledge with us. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you learned lots from Jessica and her wonderful query knowledge. As always, please make sure to rate and review this podcast where you find it and share it with your friends, those people who are in the querying trenches and need a little, something to uplift them. And connect with me on Instagram and Twitter @RoseQuinny, QUINNY. Thanks so much.